Thursday is always a fun day for me because at this point in the week, because we record Take Command in the morning, I have taken a look at the film for the other team and have some semblance of kind of what it is that makes them go, and talked to Logan about it. And so we recorded a preview that is out, and we'll give you a little bit tomorrow here on the radio, and obviously you can check it out on demand whenever you like. But it's an interesting matchup because offensively, they don't do anything that complicated, Cincinnati. And the complicated stuff is where Washington has really struggled so far this year. They have struggled to fit game plan style runs, traps, whams, draws, things that are meant to take advantage of some of the stuff they're doing, as opposed to just line up and let's get off a block on a duo play. Think halfback dive in Madden. Let's just get off a block and make a tackle. They've struggled more so with the other stuff. They've struggled with stacks and bunches and communicating in the secondary. And Cincinnati, so far this year, doesn't really do a lot of that stuff. Now, the reason why they don't do a lot of that stuff is the part that's terrifying, which is they don't particularly need to. It's an offense built on the fact that they have Joe Burrow. And it's so funny, interesting, whatever word you want to put here that kind of fits in that family, to watch an offense just go, yeah, we're good at all times. To see how it affects the game planning, to see how it affects the play calling, to see how it affects how they manage a football game, because they don't have to take a lot of risks. Because at the end of the day, if they get stuck in, they run the ball quite a bit on first down, for instance, but they're not that good at it. But they know we don't want to take a sack, we don't want to, take too much risk. So if we get 2 yards and it's 2nd and 8, we'll just run a spacing concept and have 5 guys run hooks on 2nd down, and we're going to have Joe Burrow pick the right one, and 75, 80% of the time he's going to do that, and we're going to get 5 yards, and we've gone from 2nd and 8 to 3rd and 3, and now the world is our oyster. That's a cheat code. That's not fair. You can't just spread 3 receivers out, 1 back, 1 tight end, simple stuff, or maybe even you go 2 tight ends, but pretty basic formations, and just be like, we're guaranteed 5 yards because our quarterback can take a shotgun snap, survey the field, and hit whichever is the proper guy and read out any coverage. That's shooting fish at a barrel. But that is exactly how Cincinnati is able to operate, because Burrow in that quick game element is that freaking good. And so it's really wild to watch. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but again, to manage 2nd and long, and the Commanders have done this so far this season in a very different way. They've found ways to be in good down and distances, or overcome bad down and distances because Jaden's been able to scramble so effectively. And so their plan is kind of just hey, send everybody away and wait for the rush to go by, and then Jaden will pick up the yardage. And not that that's the plan, but that's how it's played out. And for Burrow, it's very low risk of sack, very low risk of interception, very low risk, frankly, of incompletion in some of these concepts where he is just a master of his craft. And because especially they have Jamar Chase, where they can move him around a little bit and they can get good matchups for him and get him in spaces where they like, it is a real opportunity for them to just, I don't want to say steal yards, but as close as you can realistically in the NFL to guaranteeing positive outcomes. Cincinnati has the ability to do that. Now, the way to disrupt that is, pass rushing defensive tackles who arrive at the quarterback very quickly. And in theory, Washington has that. And they have it going up against a Cincinnati O-line that is a little hit or miss week to week in terms of their performance. And so I would like to explore a little bit of what Dan Quinn had to say today, starting with how because I think the notion in the fan base is that, and frankly amongst a lot of media as well, and to some extent, my hand goes up here. John Allen, Daron, Payne certainly haven't played up to their paychecks, but have they truly played poorly? Here's Dan Quinn today at the podium on just how his 2 star defensive tackles have played so far this season.
Yeah, through the first 2, I definitely know their presence inside. Some games you get more chances to rush, and some games you don't. So what we want to always make sure is we're finding the matchups when we can and get into some drop back stuff. Sometimes when you have the production they've had, other people go into the game saying, okay, these two are not going to ruin the game as well. So a little bit of both, but yeah, we're definitely looking forward to them for this week and really making their impact, and they want that too.
I don't think that they've played with particularly poor effort. I don't think that they've played with particularly poor technique on a down in, down out basis. But clearly the production needs to grow for them in terms of what you're getting down in, down out. It's one thing to play okay as a defensive tackle and not accumulate a lot of stats on a lot of teams. Because realistically, a lot of times your job is to just eat double teams and let other guys make plays. But that's not how this defense is designed from a roster construction standpoint, right? It is really hard to play this way, and it's something that I want to talk about with Dan Pizzuta from the 33rd team, who's been awesome with us the first 2 weeks. He's with us again coming up at 4:30. But when your roster is constructed for your defensive tackles to make plays, how does it affect how you actually perform as a defense? Because it can't, if you got playmakers at those positions, you don't want to just tell those guys, hey, eat double teams every single snap, and then let's let Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner make all the plays. Or, hey, we're going to rely on our edges to take advantage of their one-on-one matchups because they're not going to win as often as premier edges. Where if you have a guy who's just awesome at eating double teams and then can let the edges eat on the outside, that becomes a different equation that is something that is not new to NFL defenses. We've seen that with premier edges, as long as any of us have been watching football. So if they're just going to eat these double teams and teams are going to plan on that being the case because they're going to double team them, what does Dan Quinn do about that for John Allen and Daron Payne?
I want to be clear. I think what we're probably talking about first, John, is first and second down, because the play pass, you can still do a double, but it's a run action. So I think when you're talking about trying to get four hands on them, it didn't happen every snap, but that is something, on the first and second downs. How do you beat it? Some blitzes where you're looping and getting outside. And so those are some of the ways that we do that. If we had actually gotten them down a few times in Tampa, I would say the conversation's probably a little bit different, but that's competing and that's ball. So what do we like to do? Get some on the move. That helps guys who have that kind of quickness for their size, and we'll continue to do that.
And that's the thing. From a double team standpoint, it's one thing if they're inside. And this is something that I expect now that Johnny Newton his snap count is rising, and hopefully he is a bigger part of this defense moving forward. If you can have Newton, Allen, and Payne on the field at the same time, you can put one of those guys at an end, and now you can't double team all of them. And they're going to have to start experimenting with some of this stuff in certain situations that it works. And a team like Cincy's really interesting to think about experimenting that idea with, because they don't do a lot of the stuff that New York probably won't do a lot of the stuff that New York did. Brian Dable was like, we do not really trust Daniel Jones to read the field quickly, and we don't really trust our offensive line, and we don't have the horsepower to overcome bad situations. And so we're going to go 7-man protections. We're going to go a lot of play action. And the Bengals aren't going to do as much of that stuff if they stick to who they've been through the first 2 games of the season. It's going to look more like Tampa in terms of, hey, against Tampa, the Commanders got pressure on 2/3 of their the drop back snaps. It was crazy how frequently they got pressure. Problem was they couldn't finish for a lick, and they got, I think, no sacks or 1 sack or whatever it was, and Baker absolutely diced them in second play situations as he extended plays. And if you let Burrow do that, he will equally murder you, and you're going to give up damn near 40 points again. And so there are ways to scheme around some of this stuff. Some of this stuff is just going to be, hey, the back end has to hold up better. But I think this chess game is going to be ongoing, and I think that there are real opportunities against Cincy to try to get some of this right. The problem is on the outside, you have Jamar Chase going up against Will C, and because we just don't know who's going to play that other outside corner yet. And that part of the experiment, I feel, not that I feel great about the interior and the line stuff, but that part of the experiment is clearly the part that I feel even worse about. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, more from Dan Quinn, talking about getting Terry McLaurin the football, amongst other things. And then coming up at 4:30, our guy Dan Pizzuta joins us. We are live at Capital One Arena ahead of Mystics and Fever tonight on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.